Okay, my name is Sharyfah. I feel greatly honored and privileged to be given this opportunity by the UNITE SpLD to share with all of you today my master's dissertation research. This is a small-scale study that I've conducted in DAS. It's just within my classroom setting. Before I start my presentation proper, I would like to share with all of you a short story. Let me introduce to you Teacher Jane. Teacher Jane is a very, very dedicated and committed teacher. She sets goals for all of her students, and sometimes she lesson plans extra. So she spends time lesson planning, she has extra worksheets for all of her students, and she has very high level of professionalism. So all in all, she's a very, very dedicated teacher. She's a well-rounder. One day, she received a new placement in a class of 4. This boy's name is Alex. Alex never listens to her, never complete any task assigned, and is always seen playing with his phone underneath the table. So Alex is seen playing Pokemon underneath his table. So one day, Teacher Jane was thinking, what should I do? Should I confiscate this phone? So she decided. She confiscated Alex's phone. But what happened? Alex is still seen doodling and drawing Pokemon all over Teacher Jane's worksheets. So Teacher Jane actually gave up. So Teacher Jane said, I've been reminding him too many times of the class rules, looking out for his mischiefs, and Teacher Jane decided to remove Alex from Teacher Jane's class. Teacher Jane then called Alex's mom and explained her decision. So, the question I want to pose to all of you today is, would you have made the decision that Teacher Jane have made? I want you to hold this thought in your mind while I start my presentation. This is the title of my study, my dissertation, an evaluation of preference-based teaching approach for children with dyslexia and challenging behaviors. This is the outline for the presentation today. The problem, the reason why I actually started this research in the very first place. The first problem is, research studies have mainly focused on helping students diagnosed with dyslexia based on educational grounds. And very little research has been done in the area of increasing students' on-task behavior and attentiveness in the classroom setting. The second reason is, teachers always plan bombastic lesson plan. So they have this full, complete lesson plan for these students in class. But what happens when teachers or when the student actually lose interest in class? So when the student lose interest in class, they tend to lose focus. They lose focus, they daze off. And when they daze off, the teachers will actually spend time managing this student's behavior in the classroom, and the lesson plan will not be completed. So all your effort actually go down the drain. Okay, so this is the problem that I wish to address in my study, and I wish it will solve the issue. Okay, so what is dyslexia? There's many definitions of dyslexia. In my study, the definition is, dyslexia is a phonological deficit. That means the problem, the students will have the issues of associating the sounds to the letters. All right? And dyslexia is not only a visual difficulty. So as you can see here, the words is actually moving, but it's not only a visual difficulty. It's more than just a reading difficulty. Dyslexia affects their word recognition, reading comprehension, written expression, and poor spelling. This also affects their verbal processing speed, the verbal short-term memory. And it should also recognize that dyslexia may come along with comorbidities as well. These are some of the comorbidities of dyslexia. But comorbidities of dyslexia can be more than what I stated in my slide today. Besides the problems on attentiveness, about 30% of students diagnosed with dyslexia have behavioral and emotional issues, ranging from attention, ADHD, to depression, anxiety, loneliness, and sometimes suicidal. Therefore, a treatment approach that addresses both this reading and behavioral issues need to be taken into consideration. In DAS, we have an integrated curriculum with the OG principles infused. So one of the dyslexia intervention is called OG approach. We have 6 principles in this. What is language-based? Language-based is basically we're teaching the student in terms of the English language. Emotionally sound, lessons are actually tailored to the student's ability. Structured, sequential, and cumulative, the concepts are taught one at a time and progressively. Direct and explicit, the instructions, objective, and activities are very explicit to the students. All right, simultaneously multisensory, so ranging from manipulatives all the way to smart bar, we ensure that the lesson that we actually plan for the students tap on kinesthetic and tactile, auditory, and visual. Cognitive approach, students understand why each concept is taught. So for example, if I'm teaching my kid a reading comprehension strategy, my kid will understand why this concept is actually taught, how this strategy can help him retrieve the answers. So in DAS, we follow the OG approach to plan our lesson. In my study, the participants fall under the extremely challenging behavior category. So in DAS, we follow an OG approach to plan our lesson, and in my study, the participants fall under the extremely challenging behavior category. And sometimes teachers have trouble engaging students with extremely challenging behavior. Therefore, preference-based teaching approach is embedded inside the OG approach while lesson planning. That is my study. So some background about the literature review of preference-based teaching. So preference-based teaching, Pace et al. Conducted a study in 1985 to assess preferred and non-preferred stimuli with 6 adults with profound disabilities, and what he found out was when he used preferred stimuli for each of these individuals, there were a higher response rate to the targeted behavior. So the results showed that when preferred stimuli is actually given, there is a higher response rate to the targeted behavior compared to the baseline and non-preferred stimuli. All right, and ever since 1985, many researchers have adopted preferred activities with adults and children with profound disabilities to achieve the target behavior in training or teaching programs. One more study is Johnson et al. Also investigated on the use of preferred activities on children with moderate intellectual disability in the bid to reduce problem behavior and increase desired behavior. So the results for this study also showed that when you use a preferred activity during an educational program, it actually reduced the problem behavior and increased the targeted behavior of the kid. So what is preference-based teaching? Preference-based teaching basically means that you actually plan a lesson with accordance to the students' hobbies and interests. All right, so in my study, the students are actually given a list of preferred activities to choose from, and the teacher will plan the lesson integrating these students' hobbies and interests in the lesson. So basically, it means that we are integrating the multisensory approach that we have in DAS together with the preferred activities of the student and designing a lesson plan according to the student's interests. Okay, for my study, I've created an individualized lesson plan for each and every participant. But for preference-based teaching approach, it can also be applied in terms of a small-scale setting class, for example, like a 4 or 5, all right? And you can find general interests. Now the World Cup is all going, right? So you can actually talk about sports. So for example, one of the kids like, maybe say soccer, badminton, table tennis, you know, and you can use a general interest also in your class while planning the lesson. So eventually, this is what I aim to achieve. We have a current integrated curriculum plus OG principles. It's just with preference-based teaching. Therefore, this is my research questions. What are the effects of preference-based teaching approach on on-task behavior for students diagnosed with dyslexia and challenging behaviors? What are the effects of preference-based teaching approach on attentiveness for students diagnosed with dyslexia and challenging behaviors? And what are the effects of preference-based teaching approach on students diagnosed with dyslexia and challenging behaviors? I will actually go through the difference between the on-task behavior and attentiveness in my later slide. Let me just give you a brief profile of my students. So I have 3 students, 2 boys and 1 girl. 2 boys actually diagnosed with dyslexia and ADHD, and 1 girl actually just diagnosed with dyslexia. The general behaviors of this kid in the classroom is they are not interested in studying at all. All right, they are not motivated in class, and they are not engaged during lessons. So they tend to skip my class. At the same time, they also tend to skip school. Okay. And the average student in DAS do not have these issues. All right, but my study focused on the challenging behaviors towards the extreme end. This is the methodology of my study. So as mentioned, I have 3 participants. I'm using the OG principles plus the integrated curriculum and preference-based teaching approach within the 9 weeks frame. So I have 15 sessions. The 3 sessions in the beginning is actually my baseline phase without preference-based teaching. Last 3 weeks is also without my baseline phase, without preference-based teaching, but the middle 9 weeks is with preference-based teaching. And for this study, I actually used a non-concurrent ABA multiple baseline design. And I have IOA, so I have one inter-observer with me who will help me during my research, and my IOA will actually identify the targeted behavior. So my IOA was actually also trained by me for about 1 month or 2 to identify targeted behavior. I will actually explain to you what is targeted behavior later on. Okay, so targeted behavior basically means that it's a behavior that this kid actually portrays for the first 3 weeks. And it's a behavior that is in contrast to the targeted behavior. So for example, for my participant A, the targeted behavior was to not run around in the class and to complete the task assigned. So for the first 3 weeks, what participant A was doing was running around the classroom and did not complete any task assigned. Participant B, to use indoor voice and to obey teacher's instructions during lesson. Participant B, for the first 3 weeks, was screaming at the top of his voice. And I think even my center is actually at the void deck. Even outside, people can hear. For participant C, to ask questions related to the lesson and to complete the task assigned. So participant C was actually talking about snakes, dinosaurs, and I think a lot of board games. All right? And moving forward. Analysis, how I analyze. So I have a 15 video observation by the researcher and IOA. To answer the 2 research questions, for example, the on-task behavior. For the on-task behavior, here the targeted behavior chosen was actually broken down into on-task and off-task based on the BOSS code. So what is BOSS code? BOSS code is the behavioral observation of student in school. All right? And the on-task behavior refers to the targeted behavior that is completed by the participant. So by contrast, the off-task behavior refers to behavior that the participant deviates from. So if the participant deviates from the targeted behavior, it means it's off-task. All right? And to answer the second research question on actively engaged, or I can say attentiveness time of the participant, the on-task behavior was further broken down into passive engagement and active engagement, also by the BOSS code. All right? And we have 15 video sessions, and after the whole session, we give the participants an evaluation rating questionnaire. I would like to share with you some of the preference-based teaching approach lesson plan that I've conducted for these 3 students. So for participant A, preferred activity was science, video games, especially racing game and Minecraft, sorry. And this is the example of one of the PBT lesson plan, where I infused participant A hobbies of racing game into a racing of reading of words with the whining toy car. The second part is science. He loves volcano, so we try to infuse the volcano eruption. We try to rebuild again volcano scene with plasticine. For participant B, preferred activity was drawing, drawing and video games. So therefore, I incorporated drawing while teaching him the sequencing strategy. Sequencing strategy is a strategy that is taught in reading comprehension. So here, after every paragraph, he draws a picture, and this will make him understand the passage better. For the next activity, I actually give him words to read, and he can draw the meaning of the words. This also is a chance for me to tap on his vocabulary knowledge. Participant C, preferred activity was photography and board games. So I then planned the lesson and add in words to read inside the snake and ladder board games. So here participant C will move the markers according to the dice number, and he got to read the words in the boxes when the marker touches the box. Exactly like a typical snake and ladder game. So for the findings of my study, so student A has dyslexia and ADHD, and as you can see from the graph, that it has a gradual increase in terms of the on-task behavior. Participant A only achieved 100% on-task from session 10 to session 12 onwards. And for this, yes, for the first 3 weeks, I used the old lesson plan. Last 3 weeks was the old lesson plan. Old lesson plan meaning it's without preference-based teaching. And for the 9 weeks is the new lesson plan with preference-based teaching infused. Participant B, the targeted behaviour was to control the indoor voice. And for participant B, you can see that there's a gradual increase as well, but it took a little slower time for participant B to adapt. Therefore, participant B only had 100% on-task behaviour from session 8 to session 12. As for participant C, you can see that participant C immediately adapted to the preference-based teaching approach. And participant C has above 80% from the time I actually introduced preference-based teaching approach in my lessons. And achieved 100% on task from sessions 9 to session 12 onwards. Okay, so actively engaged behaviour. Actively engaged behaviour basically means it's the participants' attentive time in the class. And I mentioned earlier that it was broken down further. The on-task behaviour was broken down further to active engagement and passive engagement. So what is this? What's the difference? Passive engagement includes looking at the worksheet, listening to the teacher, while active engagement means that you are writing, you are raising your hand, answering a question related to answering the question that is posted by the teacher. So we were looking out for the time that the participant was attentive in class. The same thing for the first 3 weeks, I actually used the old lesson plan. Last week, old lesson plan. The middle was the new lesson plan. And as you can see here, that the participant actually achieved 100% actively engaged behaviour only on sessions 11 and 12. It took a longer time to actually adapt to the preference-based teaching. For participant B, the actively engaged also gradually increased from session 7 onwards, and we achieved 100% actively engaged behaviour in sessions 8 to session 12. As for participant C, participant C was able to adapt towards the preference-based teaching approach quite fast compared to the first two, and achieve between 90% to 100% of active engagement, and 100% active engagement between session 9 to session 12 onwards. So as you can see, there's a drastic drop in both the on-task behaviour and active engagement as soon as preference-based teaching approach was actually removed from the lesson planning. Okay? And you also notice that for participant A and B, they took a longer time to adapt to preference-based teaching, while participant C took a faster time. It's because participant C do not have a comorbid, while participant A and B has ADHD. And the questionnaire. So preference-based teaching approach, we actually give the questionnaire out, and it revealed that the participants actually enjoyed the sessions and found preference-based teaching approach fulfilling. So the preference-based teaching approach appeared to be an accepted approach for all of the 3 participants. And all of my participants actually rated strongly agree for all of the 5 questions. And so I would like to just say that what I found out from this study is preference-based teaching approach actually create a positive learning environment in the classroom. The lesson according to preference-based teaching approach actually has a correlation between the on-task behaviour and the active engagement. And at this point in time, I would like to bring back Teacher Jane's story. So Teacher Jane should include Pokemon in her lesson, such as talking about Pokemon characteristics, abilities, maybe Pokemon Go, and this will keep Alex on task and engaged. All right. Therefore, this student showed that this particular study have made me realize that it's very important that we take into consideration the student's perspective as well, rather than the teacher's perspective always. So it's very important we have a two-way of exchange of ideas when we're actually lesson planning. And my study has some limitation. I do agree that it has a very small sample size, short baseline and intervention phase, limited training for my IOA. My IOA only has about 1 month of training for me to identify the targeted behaviour. And for the questionnaire, it will be good if you have a pre-questionnaire that was given prior to the post-questionnaire. And for future research, it will be better to have a longer period of lesson observation to collect more data, bigger sample size, and adopt the ABA design, because the ABA design will actually improve the validity. And focus groups, so focus groups perhaps to teach ATIS to plan lesson in terms of the elaborated version of preference-based teaching. In DAS, our ATIS do include preference-based teaching to a certain extent, but for students with extremely challenging behavior, for this particular study, we actually included preference-based teaching approach in every component of the lesson. So it's more of planning in terms of the elaborated way. All right, that's about it. Sorry for the technical issue earlier. Thank you.